Good evening, everyone. Tonight is Tuesday, June 16th, 2020, and I'd like to welcome you to the Fitchburg City Council meeting. Please be advised that FATV is conducting audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. Councillor Boschman, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I apologize, Councillor, we need you unmuted.
Did you hear me?
Councillor, unfortunately, if we could do that again, just for our viewing audience, you were muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councillor Boschman, and I apologize for that. Next, Madam Clerk, if you could conduct the roll call.
Signed in and are present at this meeting: President Kuchmarek, Councillor Boschman, Councillor Couture, Councillor DiNatale, Councillor Fleming, Councillor Green, Councillor Schultz, Councillor Squalia, Councillor Van Hazinga, Councillor Walsh, and Councillor Zarella.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councillor Zarella with a motion relative to suspension of the rules. Councillor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we suspend any and all rules of this council or of our parliamentary authority that are inconsistent with the remote participation format or with the guidance of the state relative to remote participation during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Second.
I have a motion and second with a roll call vote. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Boschman.
Yes.
Councillor Couture. Councillor Couture.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor DiNatale.
Yes.
Councillor Fleming.
Here.
Councillor Green.
Yes.
Councillor Schultz.
Yes.
Councillor Squalia.
Yay.
Councillor Van Hazinga.
Yes.
Councillor Walsh.
Yes.
Councillor Zarella.
Yes.
And President Kuchmarek.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
The rules are suspended as unanimous. Next, we have public forum. The public has been advised to contact the city clerks by noon today regarding any public comments of not more than 2 minutes. And the following, we have one such individual who is present this evening, Mr. Glenn Fossa, and this is regarding petition 15020. I'm going to bring Mr. Fossa here with us and unmuted. Mr. Fossa, if you are with us, if you can unmute.
Yes.
The floor is yours, sir. You have 2 minutes.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, sir, and you have 2 minutes.
Okay. Just relevant to 150-20, I saw the concept of increasing a wider breadth of hiring and consideration for internships on the behalf of the city of Fitchburg, of which, of course, I support and would want to make very clear that in this particular climate currently, that we consider occupation as another protected class, and that police officers per se should be included in that, or simply the word occupation, which would include any animus that someone may have against a particular occupation. By means of example, a police officer with experience applies for a job as a police officer or other job here in the city of Fitchburg, and in no way does that concept that he was or she was a police officer at one time or currently is used against him or her.
Does that conclude your comments, Mr. Fossa?
It does indeed, and I would love to see us lead the way in the nation and include occupation in the protected class.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
Thank you, and good luck, Mike.
Excellent. Next, if there are no objections, councilors will hear an oral report from the Appointments Committee, which met earlier this evening, took up the following matters. It was a singular appointment, new appointment, Chief Engineer, Fire Chief, Fitchburg Fire Chief, Thomas A. Dadio Jr., All members of the committee were present, and a unanimous vote to reject the confirmation of Deputy Chief Dadio. Councillor Zarella, speaking on the committee report, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we accept and enact the recommendation of the Appointments Committee, and as the maker of the motion, I would like to reserve my privilege to speak to the motion first if it receives a second.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Second. Second.
I have a motion and second. In speaking to the motion, hold on, Councillor Zarella, let me just mute everyone here. The floor is again yours, speaking on the motion.
Thank you. As I have noted previously, I firmly believe that the primary purpose of debate in a council session is to determine the vote on the issue at hand. The secondary function of informing the public is often better served by communications from councillors outside of the context of a meeting, where it is possible to introduce a far greater degree of nuance and careful consideration to the facts communicated. Noting the unanimous recommendation of the Appointments Committee and knowing my own voting intention, it is clear to me that the outcome of this motion is not in question. This is obviously a delicate and contentious issue, and one involving two men who are both honorable and dedicated public servants. The council has received an abundance of information on the matter and has had ample and numerous opportunities to contact any involved parties and have questions answered. It is my fear that debating this issue tonight may result in one or more of us, not accepting myself, inadvertently saying something that could be construed as bringing disrepute or dishonor to either of these excellent firefighters, to the department, or to the city of Fitchburg, or saying something that may inflame discord and harm the ability of the new fire chief to effectively lead his department. Accordingly, I move the question.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second. Second.
I have a motion and second. This is not a debatable matter. This will be decided by 2/3 majority vote by roll call. Madam Clerk.
Long time ago.
Councillor Boschman,
Cake has been cooked a long time.
Councillor Boschman,
Taking this vote. Can you take this vote?
This is the vote to, this is the moving the question.
Councillor
Councilor
Kucher,
Boschman, we can't hear you. Can you give us either a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
The moving the questions.
thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Kucher,
Yes.
Councillor Di Natale,
No.
Councillor Fleming,
Yes.
Councillor Green,
Yes.
Councillor Schultz,
Yes.
Councillor Squalia,
Yay.
Councillor Van Hazinga,
No.
Councillor Walsh,
Yes.
Councillor Zarella,
Yes.
President Kushmerek.
Yes.
That is 9-2.
So, councilors, we'll now conduct a roll call vote to accept the recommendation of the Appointments Committee, which was to reject the appointment put before the body. Madam Clerk, for a roll call.
Councillor Boschman,
I accept.
Councillor Kucher,
Yes.
Councillor Di Natale,
No.
Councillor Fleming,
Yes.
Better. He's getting it over. Yeah.
Councillor Fleming,
Yes.
thank you. Councillor Green,
Yes.
Councillor Schultz,
Yes.
Councillor Squalia,
Yay.
Councillor Van Hazinga,
Yes.
Councillor Walsh,
Yes.
Councillor Zarella,
Yes.
President Kushmerek.
Yes.
That is 10-1.
Motion carries by a margin of 10-1. We'll now hear a recommendation, a report from the Committee on Records. Councillor Squalia. I apologize.
Hi. We have reviewed the records and they appear to be in order.
They're going to bring us up.
Motion to accept.
I have a motion and second to accept. Unless there are objections, we will accept the report from the Committee on Records by unanimous consent. Seeing no objections, it is accepted. Next, we have communication from Tom Skarofsky, Executive Director of Planning and Development. That will be sent, that will be placed on file in the city clerk's office. And that was referred to petition 2920, as well as the city solicitor. Next, we have Pension Reserves Investment Management Board communication that will be placed on file in the city clerk's office. Now we have a special presentation regarding the City Hall update for the City Hall Building Committee. I'm going to unmute AJ Trigny, Chief of Staff, and then Mr. Trigny, if you could identify the following individuals that you need me to unmute and bring in, that would be helpful.
Sure. Can you hear me? Yeah.
We can hear you.
Mr. President, thank you very much for this time. Hold on one second. I'm going to turn down a microphone here so that you can hear me properly. Okay, if you could, thank you, Mr. President. We're looking for Pam Bailey, our Senior Project Manager, Jerry Hammersley, our Project Superintendent, Anthony DeLuzio, he's our Owner's Project Manager, Mary Delaney, our Chief Procurement Officer, Chair of the Building Committee, as well as Mayor DiNatale.
All right, I believe all are unmuted, and we're just waiting for the last of the cameras to turn on. And I will, I'll turn this over to you. Who is going to lead us through this presentation? I apologize.
Okay. Are we all set here? All right. Mr. Kushmer, what we'd like to do is begin with Pam Bailey. She's going to do an overall project update, and then we'll follow up with Jerry Hammersley with the schedule update, and then Tony DeLuzio with the budget update, and Mayor DiNatale with a budget update as well.
So, hello, everybody. I'm Pam Bailey. It was so wonderful to see you all and bring you all through. Sorry, the building this yesterday, and then our special follow up tour this afternoon. FATV, is someone going to turn the screen to me so I can operate the PowerPoint?
You should be able to screen share.
Oh, okay. Wait, share screen.
Wonderful.
Sorry. Well, first of all, can you all see my screen?
Yes, I believe we can all see it.
All right, and then I need to, I apologize. I was thinking,
if you hit maybe from the beginning on the far left.
Thank you. All right, so when I say from the beginning, as we talked about the last few days or last day when we walked through this, from the beginning, but then it was February when we were all together on our last tour, and a lot has happened since then. One of the things that where we're coming from, beginning of March, the framing for all the walls and floors and everything was coming into place. This was the view from the bridge from the 1879 into 1853 part of the building.
Pam, I apologize. I don't think, Counselor, correct me if I'm not seeing the slide advance here.
All right. If it's on my screen, it says I am screen sharing.
You might not be on the right screen.
There we are.
Okay. God bless technology, and thank goodness we're all going through all this together.
It's our blessing and our curse.
Well, but being resilient.
That's right.
So again, the view from the bridge, just part of one of the great things, connecting the old and the new, the 1879 and the 1853. One of the great architectural features of Icon's design are these wonderful double height corridors, which bring, circulation for the public around the public offices, but then bring light to everything.
So this slide here takes you out to the north elevation of the building along Main Street. The brownstone, the base of the pilasters. We had a good amount of work with the restoration. This was at the conclusion of the restoration after we had removed the scaffold. We basically had to go through and do a lot of patchwork to these, and then put the coloring back on them so they are the way that you see them today. After when we went through on the tours yesterday. So this shot taken mid-March was when we got into the balance of the demolition of the plaza in front of the legislative building. So we removed all the old brick pavers to make way for the new planter beds and granite curb and sidewalks that we're in the process of putting in place now.
All right, so I really like the corridors. Sorry for all the shots. Again, more of the development of the corridors, taping, finishing.
This shot was taken, so this is your old drive-through at the legislative building. Basically, that old slab with the pieces in the middle was removed. We put in some frost walls on the two sides, and we've actually now gone ahead and put up the walls in place to give the maintenance facility or storage area that's going to be used. We've actually created the exit through the back of this area as well. So on the perimeter, after the restoration was complete, the scaffolding was removed. The last thing to go in to basically make the envelope tight was the Intus windows, these 33-foot high windows that surround the back of the building. So we had nine openings plus the small ones over the doors. So these took a couple 3 weeks to get basically in and get them tight. And these have actually now been all trimmed out, and the trim is all actually been painted. So these are all complete at this stage of the game.
All right, and I just have to point out, this is March 23rd. There's snow. Do you see there's still snow in Fitchburg? All right, this is just as a quick review of things that we needed to do, put in place from the governor's mandates on public construction. We needed to have sinks because our building was enclosed, our facilities were enclosed. We needed to have temporary sinks that did have hot water. So the one on the left is a sink that we installed in a bathroom, which will be a bathroom in the administrative building on the first floor. And the sink on the right is a totally temporary sink with, again, hot water that was installed in the legislative building. And the requisite signage all over, including, you don't walk in the building if you haven't had your temperature checked.
So on the side of the mechanical systems, not yet in place in this picture is the emergency generator, which would be on the back left. But these are all your condensing and compressor units that now control what will be the variable refrigeration units, the cassettes that are in each one of the spaces inside. There's 4 dedicated refrigeration lines. So 2 of the PVC pipes that stick up on the left is where all the refrigeration piping that comes from the building to feed all of these units. And they pump the cooling back into the building through these units. So Pam and I were talking today. Lucky for us, we had most of the larger equipment had been already in the works for delivery, before the pandemic hit us. So On the left-hand side, the elevator was delivered in early April, as well as the switch gear that's on the top right-hand side of the picture. We were able to rig that down through the elevator shaft before the elevator installation started, and then of course the emergency generator that's in the bottom right-hand side there, that's out on the west side of the building, was also delivered in early April as well. So we were lucky to get most of that stuff. We did have one piece of equipment that was impacted, was the rooftop unit for the legislative building. That ended up coming in about 5 weeks later than anticipated, but we were able to resequence a lot of the activities so that didn't impact us on schedule.
Then just staying on this slide, just on the topic of impacts, there are other things. Our granite, that was impacted. The granite, but both, the granite yards or stone yards shut down mostly. So shop drawings and delivery and fabrication. A lot of the delivery chains for light fixtures, those got slowed down. Some of the parts for our electrical panels, but again, there have been impacts, but I don't want to say that there have been minimal, but we were lucky on some major ones. So this is a picture of the interior of the legislative building. One thing to note, besides our temporary sink, is also that it's nighttime, and we did have to run double shifts just to keep the carpenters were the largest single crew on the site. So to keep the social distancing, we needed to split the shifts up. So the carpenters are working in evening, and this is as they're starting to frame and drywall on the inside of the legislative building. And this is your wonderful legislative building coming together, showing the great framework of that slanted, canted wall, which will help so much with the sound quality within the room, and then also being able to retain the coffered ceiling from the bank building.
So this shot here is taken in the east side parking lot. So one thing to know was we were able to salvage all of the granite curbing that was pulled out of the property prior to the demolition when we were doing all the site preparation. So the only new curb that was required was out along the Main Street corridor there. This parking lot on the east side was completely restored with the old granite, as well as the west side parking lot and portions of Wood Place. So again, as I mentioned earlier, with the old drive-through section that's now going to be the maintenance storage area, the walls have now taken shape. We're actually putting on the finishes of that. It's a product that's called Drive It, and it's installed with a base coat as we stand today. We just have to put the coloring into that coat to get it finished off.
Okay, I admit I really like the corridors. But I also just like this shot of, just I thought this just demonstrates so well the light that comes through these corridors. And we're moving now into the finishes. The picture on the left is the view from the bridge with the LVT vinyl tile. It's a wood design. It's a high quality, heavy duty vinyl tile, which really looks sharp, and that's on the bridge. And the picture on the right is in the large area on the second floor, the carpet, which is the Board of Health and ISD Building Department office.
So this is the rooftop unit being set on the legislative building. This came in just a couple of weeks ago. We're actually in the process now of getting this all connected underneath and getting it ready for startup. And you will note that the roof here is all completed as well. That did get completed last November.
All right, sorry, another creative art shot. This is stair 2. This is the stair in the back of the building. This is the stair that is the not public stair. This is the secure communication stairway for the employees. This is the view from the Honorable Mayor Stephen D. Natale's office. Lovely view of the park.
And just another exterior shot along the back of the legislative building. And you can take note that the sidewalks, the bituminous pavement did get installed actually a week ago today. We got all of the handicap ramps that basically touch all of the bituminous paving done a couple of days prior to that, just so that everything that touches these was completed once those were installed. So this is your attic in the City Hall building. So once we were done with all the restoration, basically through this area, having removed all of the old components that were up in this space, we did get the insulation done on the top to get the thermal issues taken care of, and then as you can see, it's been become pretty congested up in this area with all of the fire protection, the HVAC, and plumbing that was planned for this space. There are two means of egress. There is one ship's ladder that comes up from stair 2, and then there's a pull-down set of stairs that's in the front lobby area of the 3rd floor, just to make it a little bit easier to navigate through some of the spaces up in this area. But certainly a lot of coordination went into this area. And then you can see out in the far front in the left picture is the truss that we did make the repairs on.
And in the picture, well, the right, and sorry, that's the right, that's the left, that those trusses are still there. So you've got all of this modern technology in with the building's bones. And then
Pam's favorite area in the front of the building, I believe she calls it the cone of democracy. The picture on the left here shows the installation of the cone getting started. They actually put in the final pieces of the second layer of this today. So definitely an exciting piece to get put into place. But still some coordination still even had to be done with this. We had to get the sprinkler heads basically coordinated during the installation of these panels because the access to them is difficult once these panels are actually installed in place on the slope. Certainly a fair amount of wires that are attached up to the joists and all the purlins above to basically support these pieces. So we'll be in the process basically in the next couple of weeks of taping and painting and getting all the finishes in the surrounding this area completed. So as you know, you all came through yesterday and then today, that this is the project looks amazing. I mean, the how it was since February to now, and yet we've got still another 5-6 months to go, and what needs to take place in these next few months are all of the millwork is going to be coming in, the finishes are going to be starting. You know, I'm going to turn it over to Jerry, and as he says, the devil's in the details. Just to not belabor, but a couple of points of what we're going to be doing before we turn it over to you in November. Thanks, Pam. So certainly the startup process is upon us. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be starting to do the startup of the mechanical systems. And as Pam mentioned, we have the millwork guys are basically on deck at this point. I'm talking to those guys daily about upcoming deliveries that we're going to be getting into place. In this photo in the background where you see the fiberglass insulation, we've actually since finished drywalling that area with all the reglets, and there's some millwork panels that go down below this. They're actually coming out to field measure those to make final cuts on those so that those can come in the next month or so to get those installed as well. But certainly working through with Colliers and the mechanical team, the startup and commissioning process will certainly take us through the next few months along with the finishes. It's been a long road to get where we are, but the project is definitely looking good. It's coming together. But I believe Tony's going to kind of finish up here and talk to you about some of the numbers.
We'll turn it over to Tony, and thanks again for letting us walk you physically through the building yesterday and then again tonight.
Yeah, it's great to see everybody.
Thank you, Pam. Honorable Mayor, City Councilors, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight to the budget for the City Hall project. As you've heard, it's been several months since we were all before you when the project was in somewhat demolition, but moving into a reconstruction phase. And as you've seen, both on the screen and in person, if you were able to tour the building this week, the multitude of tradesmen that Pam, Jerry, and their team have coordinated, tradesmen and craftsmen, have done a wonderful job putting your building back together and taking real painstaking care in doing a wonderful job. However, I've always had the project task of managing your budget. Pam, I'm not sure if you can zoom in at all on that or whether folks can see it at all. Maybe not, but I hope you can all see it. The project originally had a budget back in July of 2018 of $23,500,000. And the numbers that we're here really to focus on today are the bottom numbers there under category contingency. Construction has a contingency. The owners have a contingency, and that's normal for every project. Excellent, Pam. Thank you.
Now I got to steer.
Yep. And we start off projects with contingency, knowing that we're going to use it. We're going to use it somewhere along the way, but we're going to be very steadfast in how we use it and appropriate it. And over the last 6 months or so since we met with you folks, we started having to rebuild and repair a lot of the masonry. And I think when I was in front of this group last, we were already at $600,000 of structural unforeseen conditions as we peeled open the drywall, as we started to take apart the exterior wall board and find the degree of which the masonry had deteriorated on the inside of the building, along with some very odd construction work that occurred in the 60s, where beams and trusses and posts and different supporting members were cut and inappropriately or insufficiently reinforced, which ultimately led, to the failure of the building in a much larger degree. We started to repair and had to pay money to repair those elements. So in addition to what I had previously stated of about 600 in the past 6 to 7 months, we've had another 300,000 thereabouts in unforeseen building conditions. We've also had a number of unforeseen site conditions, some of which have occurred recently as the past couple weeks, where as we were putting in the front sidewalks in the plaza that you saw a picture of recently, where the flagpoles go out in front of the legislative building, we encountered old foundations. So whatever building was there when the bank was built were never really removed. They were cut down below grade to some extent, but they were paved over, surfaced over with sidewalks. They were left in place. This project had to absorb removing those pieces, shifting light poles, shifting the flag poles, reworking our site plan, and developing a project revision scheme around those elements that were left there some time ago by previous construction. All through that and through the development of the project and the project budget, no one could have foreseen, right, the pandemic which hit. And other than the signage and the sinks that Bond has shown you through the governor's mandate for temperature screening, we had on-site medical personnel screening all of the workers, both during the morning shift arrival and the second shift arrival. We had the second shift, which required bringing on a new second shift supervisor, more staff to supervise the second shift. And we've had costs that not only started in March, continued through April, But even now, we predict that some of those costs, although our second shift work is done, some of those lingering pandemic costs are scheduled right out through September if the governor doesn't, open up, or if we have setbacks. So we're budgeting that money, which is bringing us here tonight. And really, that cost is going to be in excess of $300,000 specifically to deal with COVID-related claims and cost impacts. Both of those items tonight bring us to a budget that's somewhere close to $600,000. Pam, if you can slide that over a little, 545 or close to $600,000 that was never budgeted for this project, and the project contingencies that I spoke of earlier cannot absorb those. And the mayor will speak momentarily about some opportunities to offset those costs, but as a mechanism for the project to continue moving forward, we the project team have to approve those costs, pay for those costs during these April, May, June, July periods on a monthly basis. We have to fund those costs which were unforeseen, understanding that there might be state, federal programs that have some ability to reimburse you, but those programs often come with audit procedures, timeframes that are months down the road by the time you submit your costs, which you have to spend in advance. Submit the cost, get audited, get reimbursed for. So that brings us here tonight with that $600,000 number. One last thing, and then I'll turn it over to the mayor. CM at risk is a methodology that was recommended and used for this project. And if you recall, that CM at risk carries a contingency to it. And the CM, as the project moved forward, has given the city back much of its contingency. And so that approved transfer number that you see in the construction contingency category of $610,000 is money that the CM had set aside for scope, holes, and allowances that they've given back and used to the benefit of your project, to the benefit of City Hall, and to offset by direct credit back to the owner some of the costs that we have foreseen and have encountered thus far. But again, with the pandemic and the amount of unforeseen conditions that we've encountered, they're holding steadfast right now to about $321,000 of that money. And our real anticipated return is somewhere in the $260,000 range, which will not cover the full deficit that we could be predicting or projecting at this date. So that projection of 200 to 900,000 is really that $600,000 deficit that we're speaking of tonight. And with that, I'll either take questions or turn it over to the mayor.
I think I'm going to try and stop sharing. Hopefully this will work. There we go.
We'll go next to the mayor, and then councilors. You can utilize the chat box if you have questions of the committee that just presented. That said, Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. This is partly a statement that was provided to me by the building committee, but it's a collaborative effort that we put this together. Hopefully it'll help you to understand our request this evening. When the building committee last presented a project update to the city council in December, updates to the project included demolition, restoration, and repair. Since that time, significant progress has been made, with nearly 80% of the project completed. Currently, painting, flooring, and hanging ceilings are in progress. With good weather, exterior site work has been moving along with the installation of curbing, sidewalks, lighting, and pathways. During the December meeting, we also reported that approximately $1.3 million remained in both construction and owner's contingency, with approximately $300,000 committed, leaving approximately $1 million in both the construction and owner's contingencies. These are two different buckets of money. The city is allowed to expend the owner's contingency on unforeseen issues that arise over the course of the project, items that are changed in the field, and unexpected costs. The largest single factor that caused the city to utilize the owner's contingency was unforeseen structural issues totaling nearly $750,000. An example of an unforeseen structural issue is the location where the 1853 building joined the 1879 portion of the building. During design, it was assumed that this wall was, in its entirety, load-bearing and structurally sound. However, during demolition, it was in fact discovered to be a void and would require steel and masonry support to appropriately bear the expected load of the structure and properly support the building. This is also the reason why plans were changed to accommodate a single second floor as opposed to a sloped ramp to join the offset of the second floor. This single change order exceeded $150,000. Second bucket of contingency money is the construction contingency, allowances and holdbacks. This bucket of money is utilized by the contractor for costs and unforeseen issues in the project that may not have been included as part of the scope when items are bid out, but are necessary and resulted in a change order. In addition, it is dollars that are allowances in existing change orders and if not utilized are rolled back into the project. Traditionally, over the course of the project, as milestones are completed and unforeseen issues are discovered and resolved, the contractor contingency is rolled back to the owner to be utilized within the project. Currently, there remains approximately $500,000 in contingency. I think Anthony mentioned that to you. Allowances and holdbacks. These funds are due back to the city if they remain unspent. In spite of the COVID pandemic and national unrest across the board, project continues to move forward and is on schedule. The building committee would like to commend the efforts of Colliers and Bond for being able to keep this project on schedule, even with supply chain disruptions, workforce changes, and developing new protocols expeditiously to ensure worker safety. The project has incurred COVID expenses, which include additional cleaning and disinfecting, a second shift to comply with CDC guidelines and on distancing, nursing staff to conduct wellness checks, hand washing stations, upgraded PPE requirements, and other costs that the project would not have realized otherwise. There is currently a projection of approximately $250,000 in related expenses. It is the city's understanding that these costs are reimbursable by the CARES Act, and the city is submitting for those reimbursements this week. However, these unpredictable factors have caused pressures on our contingency budget beyond the standard expectation. Due to the ever-changing guidelines and procedures related to the pandemic, the contractor must hold the remainder of the contingency to meet current and future unexpected requirements related to COVID-19. It should be noted, pandemic aside, Bond has been very cooperative in working with the city in the way that a construction manager at risk firm should when it comes to drawdowns of construction contingency, scope allowances, and holdbacks. To date, Bond has drawn down and returned to the project approximately $300,000. City Hall Building Committee met on June 6, 2020 to discuss, review, and make suggestions to you on how to bring this project to full completion. It was determined that without additional funding, the project would not only be able to move forward. Building Committee, by unanimous vote, would like to recommend that you appropriate $600,000 from available funds. The $600,000 request encompasses two categories. The first is $500,000 to address owner contingency that will be used to leverage the existing $500,000 in the construction contingency allowances and holdbacks. The intent would be to preserve these dollars and return to the city as much as possible, assuming no additional unforeseen issues or additions are experienced. The second part entails $100,000 to address changes, yes, again, for COVID-19 concerns, which could not have been predicted and were not part of the original design that was developed nearly 2 years ago. In closing, as you are aware, the restoration of this building has been a community project for the past 4 years. At 80% completion And with nearly 8 months remaining, the building committee is ecstatic to return the city's central place of government and community, reopening this iconic building to the public with the prominence and distinction it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a motion and second made by Councilor Walsh and Councilor Di Natale. Both of you, I have questions from other councilors that if we were to accept the motion, then they wouldn't be able to ask members of the building committee. Mr. Parliamentarian, Councilor Zarella?
The motion is only on suspension of the rules. As such, if we were to take the motion and it were to pass, we could then ask questions of the committee.
Thank you, Councilor Zarella. I appreciate it. Okay, so I have a motion and second for suspension of the rules. That said, I'm going to unmute everyone and Madam Clerk, roll call vote for suspension of the rules on 14620.
Counselor Boishman. Counselor Boishman.
Sorry about that. Yes.
Counselor Kuchar.
Yes.
Counselor Di Natale.
Yes.
Counselor Fleming.
Yes.
Counselor Green.
Yes.
Counselor Schultz.
Yes.
Counselor Squalia.
Nay.
Counselor Van Hazinga.
Yes.
Counselor Walsh.
Yes.
Counselor Zarella.
Yes.
President Kuchmarek.
Yes.
That is 10-1.
Right. First, I have Councilor Boishman who wishes to ask a question. Councilor, I'm just going to unmute you here. The floor is yours.
I got a question. My question is this. A few months back, you came in front of us and you told us that you guys were ahead of schedule and that I made a joke out of it and I said, you saved the city over $6 million and there is a Santa Claus. And now we're coming back in front of us asking for $600,000. But you were ahead of the game by $600,000. Could you tell me what happened? I didn't understand what happened between then and now, besides the virus, because the winter wasn't that bad, and every time I drove by, everybody was working. And that's the only question I have. If we were ahead of the game over 600,000, then where did that 600,000 go when you mention it? If I recall right.
All right, Councilor. So we'll direct your question. I believe we want Tony DeLuzio to address this. Tony, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. As was stated, over the past 6 months, we've had as much as 300,000 of that overage directly related to structural unforeseen conditions. That's been the bulk of the change orders on this project from day one. Everything in the building that's taken apart needed to be structurally reinforced and brought up to today's seismic codes throughout both buildings. In so far as the legislative building, built as a typical commercial building back in the 80s, I guess, somewhere about there. That had a change of use as well. So the code required changes were a bit different relative to the seismic bracing and the structural integrity of that building. We had to reinforce the roofing members in that particular building to accept the rooftop unit for the HVAC that you saw going in. And then the changes outside the building in site work. So there was a number of these unforeseen foundations left on the site from previous construction that we've had to deal with, both with design changes and cost impacts.
Councilor Boishman, does that answer your question?
Yes, I guess we'll have to. One other question. Are we using the best materials that we can buy on the market for everything we're doing? Or are we taking, are we going down one grade?
Is this a Jerry question?
Sure. I'll start off. We're using material grades as specified by the architect, who was obligated to design and specify material that fit the project budget. So we have changed a number of floor materials. The other day you asked me about drywall. We have abuse resistant drywall in areas that we think will take the most abuse. Abuse resistant drywall is not used everywhere because in some areas we have wainscot paneling up to 42 inches high or thereabouts. So that's where most of your abuse will happen. We are using best quality grade materials that could be allowed under the budget.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Next, thank you. Thank you to both. Next, we have Councillor Green. Give me one moment. Councillor Green. This allows me to unmute you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Again, I just want to first say that I appreciate the dedication to our community partners that we've had all along with this project. I appreciate you taking the time to restore the history of our buildings with this project. I know that hasn't always been easy to match some of the historical features. So again, I want to point out and thank you for that as a historian for our community. My question has to do with moving forward during this pandemic. Will the workstations and in the different departments that we have in City Hall, will there be a requirement to put up the plexiglass now to provide the barrier between the public and our workforce, where the public will come in contact with our employees? And is that part of the budget that, Tony, that you talked about in the contingency, or is that something that's going to come to follow? And then I guess either to the mayor or to AJ, is that something then we will be able to potentially maybe get reimbursed for under CARES Act or federal reimbursement due to an expense that was unforeseen on our behalf?
Tony, if you could take this.
Sure, I'll start and then I'll let AJ and or the mayor speak to the reimbursement phase. Right now, we understand the city does want us to look at those. So Colliers, Icon, Bond, we are working on your behalf to develop costs and details of how we would implement those barriers. Would it be plexiglass? Would it be glass? How do we work a transaction window? What size openings? How would people pass documents back and forth? So while we're working on all those details, we are developing budgets. There is $100,000 within this $600,000 that we are projecting, that AJ mentioned, that we're forecasting for either those types of barriers, or even this past week, we met with the furniture vendor to see if we would need to increase the height of the partitions. So in those low wall partition areas, is 54 okay? Is 60 a little better protection? In some areas, do we need to go higher to prevent that cross germination, if you will, between occupants, even within the functioning areas or departments of City Hall, not only from the public, but internal within those departments. There's a number of economic development, community development is one, the building department, Board of Health. There are a number of areas that have a lot of connected cubicles with workers that either facing each other or one behind each other, speaking to or over the panels. So we are looking at all of those options for your behalf.
Thank you.
In terms of the CARES Act, Councilor Green, the quick answer to that is no. So actual construction costs that go into the building would not be covered. What would be covered are prevention costs, such as the additional cleaning, the public nurse that we've hired, or thermometers, masks, those types of things are what being covered by the CARES Act currently.
Wow, I'm shocked at that. All right, thank you.
Next, we have Councilor Zarella. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I noticed that Councilor Schultz has a question and I do not have a question. I just have a comment. So I will defer the floor until Councilor Schultz has had a chance to have his question answered.
Understood. Thank you, Councilor Zarella. Councilor Schultz will unmute you. The floor is yours, Councilor Schultz.
Okay, before I ask my question, I just want to congratulate everybody involved with continuing the project through a pandemic. So I think you've done a great job with moving forward.
Thank you.
I did want to ask about the COVID-19 requirements, and if we have a projection on what it might cost through the length of the project till we finish the project. Has anybody looked at what that might cost? Are we going to have to come back maybe for more funds later, because it's going to be costly till if and when the governor loosens things up for us?
Mr. Chair.
If you would.
So we had, May was probably our most expensive month with full COVID implementation, buying of the sinks, setting up of the sinks and the plumbing and all the work that went into that. So what we see now, June, July, August, and we're anticipating this through September, are not so much of those initial spike costs, if you will, but more of the ongoing maintenance of those items. We've also, as we implemented artificial intelligence temperature scanning via computer-based, and we were able to relieve the project of the nursing professional, medical professional to do those temperature screenings. So that was a one-time cost as opposed to keeping that person on. We were able to complete the work of the bulk of the carpentry to eliminate the second shift and start reducing those costs. So we are projecting the full cost through September will be somewhere in the magnitude of $300,000. And that is part of the numbers on the sheet that was presented earlier. So yes, we are projecting the full cost, and we're over the hurdle now. And I would say if the governor keeps opening up the state and opening up the economy, and as things get relaxed, we hope to see that those costs continue to decrease on a monthly basis.
Just as a follow-up, now you're projecting through September. Now, there are also some of the medical experts are predicting a second wave that could happen this fall. So we won't be done in September. We're going to be still in the project from September to November. I'm just wondering if we're going to need additional funding at that time.
I can't guess that far ahead. If there is another spike, certainly, and it doesn't have to happen between now, September or after. We could have some spike, somebody show up to the job site, a worker comes in who picks it up from somewhere, wherever they're out eating or whatever they're doing on their own time, and brings it to the job site. As highly contagious as this is, you could have a spread that runs through the workers that are on site. And we can't really predict what that would cost, either in time delay or dollar impact.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, we have Councilor Zarella. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I just want to say I appreciated the tour yesterday. Things are really coming along, and I am very excited to have this project completed. I'd like to put tonight's appropriation into perspective. We're assuming, first of all, we're not assuming that 100% of this $600,000 is going to be spent and go away. It might be, But what I'm hearing is that we're expecting that at least some of it will be coming back to us once we clear these hurdles, assuming there isn't a second wave that slows down construction, assuming no other issues come up. But even if we assume this full appropriation constitutes a cost overrun on the project, we are looking at approximately a 2.6% overrun on a $23.5 million project with a pandemic factored in. That's assuming no costs come back to us. That's assuming no reimbursement from the state. These contractors who have been working with managed to keep us within 2.6% of our projected budget with structural defects that had to be remedied and with a worldwide pandemic. That's not something we should be upset about. That's a victory. And frankly, even aside from that, I can't imagine not voting yes on this, because at the point we're at right now, we would be talking about saving $600,000 by leaving the equivalent of $23 million sitting there unfinished on Main Street. So I am very much in favor of this appropriation, and I hope that the council will approve it.
Next, we have Councilor Di Natale. The floor is yours.
Yeah, when I saw this request, I rolled my eyes. I gave the mayor a good talking to offline and his chief of staff. I said, thank you, gentlemen, because this is going to resurrect the anti-City Hall crowd to have a field day with this. Because this is good news to them, because they, being the mages that they are, they predicted this was going to overrun. Doesn't matter what the reason is, of course. How much of the $600,000 overrun is attributed to the pandemic? Is it safe to say that without this pandemic, this request wouldn't be necessary? Is that a fair assumption, by and large?
I would ask Tony to field this if you could.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The numbers, the way they look, and what we've reported tonight is the cost of the pandemic alone will be somewhere in excess of $300,000, 320, somewhere in that range is what we are predicting today. So even if those costs hadn't happened and we're looking for 600,000, your delta then or your variance is approximately $300,000.
So $300,000 overrun on a $23.5 million project. Now, Councilor Zarella said it earlier, and what he said is blasphemy for some, because we're not supposed to celebrate an overrun. We're not celebrating an overrun. I have done capital finance projects in the private sector for 15 years. 84%, I kept a tally when I was at work, 84% of our private sector capital projects always required more money. Because I know the common theme is public investment. It's going to go over budget. It's guaranteed before we start putting the shovels in the ground. And so I don't want the councilor's comments or mine to be construed as, you know what, folks, spend $1 million too, or $2 million. What I'm trying to do is put people's minds into the proper perspective and context, because people are lied to regularly about this project. And, you know, some of my constituents, when they learned the explanations, when they actually read the explanations, it made sense to them. Fortunately, there's a contingent of folks who don't care what the explanation is. So that's why I was upset when I saw this request. I said, here we go again. We got to talk about this again. Doesn't surprise me. $300,000 for an 1853 building and an 1870s building. That speaks to how properly planned at the beginning this was. And the presentation that was made back in December, at the time, they were sitting on $1.3 million in contingency, with a lot of risks retired, but not all the risks. And they made that clear. So it is not uncommon for a capital project involving a building that's 160 years old to go over budget, especially when more than half of that variance is because of a global pandemic that for some we were supposed to know was going to happen 3 years ago. So I am going to support this because when you're 80% along on a job and you initially voted for it, this is the risk you assume by even starting the project. So I would be foolish not to support it when I supported it from the start. And the only alternative is we have the construction crews drop their shovels and drop their tools and walk away from the job site. And then people will really be upset that we blew $23 million in deference to 600,000, more than 300 of which is no one's fault, but, due to the pandemic. So I'm going to support the appropriation. And I just wanted to make those comments because what's always been frustrating for me is when people have it dead set in their mind that something's wrong, they don't care what the information is. They don't care what the facts are. And so they're going to take this as an opportunity to trash the city further. So I thank you for allowing me to speak. And I want to thank the project team for the tremendous job they've done to hold a project within 1.5% of budget. And everyone should know this, even in your own personal lives. If you have a renovation at home, no one can see through walls. No one can see through floors. You don't have magic powers. So things can happen. And so I just wanted to make those obvious statements, but unfortunately, in my experience, the obvious isn't obvious to some people. So thank you very much.
So I have a motion to approve 146-20 made by Councilor Van Hazinga, and I have seconds on the motion by Councilors Zarella, Green, Fleming, and Kuchar. And 146-20 reads, ordered that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $600,000, same to be charged against available funds and credited to City Hall renovation, capital fund, and construction. I have Councilor Boschman speaking on the motion. Councilor Boschman, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, forget it.
Okay. So with that, I will turn this to Madam Clerk for a roll call vote. I'm going to unmute everyone. Madam Clerk, roll call vote.
Councilor Boschman,
Yes.
Councilor Kuchar,
Yes.
Councilor Di Natale, Councilor Di
Yes.
Natale, thank you.
Yes.
Councilor Fleming,
Yes.
Councilor Green,
Yes.
Councilor Schultz,
Yes.
Councilor Squalia,
Nay.
Councilor Van Hazinga,
Yes.
Councilor Walsh,
Yes.
Councilor Zarella,
Yes.
President Kuchmarek.
Yes,
That is 10-1.
motion carries. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you all to
Councilors,
the project management team. Thank you for being with us this evening, and thank you for all of your hard work and efforts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilors.
Councilors.
Thank you.
All right, returning to the agenda. Councilors, give me one moment here. Next item on the agenda is Economic Development Committee oral report meeting of June 9th, 2020. And I will turn this over to Councilor Van Hazinga.
Thank you, Mr. President. So on June 9, 2020, the Economic Development Committee heard petition 14320 by Councilors Marissa Fleming and Andrew Van Hazinga to reevaluate the overall dynamic of the Day Street Municipal Parking Lot. There was much discussion with various members of city departments, and in the course of that, we did learn that specific items of the city code would have to be changed to make changes to that parking lot. So we did recommend that the petition be given leave to withdraw, which the committee did do and approved unanimously. We also discussed alternative plans for the parking lot in the future, involving the possible dedication of the entire lot to commercial use, with compensation by increasing on-street parking by accelerating the plan to make Day Street completely one-way and add additional spaces. But future aspects of that plan need to be worked out and before a new petition can be submitted. Thank you very much.
I have a motion and second. Motion made by Councilor Zarella and a second by Councilor Kuchar. And unless there is objection, we'll adopt the committee's recommendation, which is to give it leave to withdraw by unanimous consent. Seeing no objections, it is adopted by unanimous consent. Thank you, Councilor Van Huizenga. Next, we have Finance Committee reports. I'm going to mute everyone. And Councilor Di Natale, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance met on June 9th and took up several orders, and I'll try to briefly go through them without reading them in its full context. We voted unanimously on a $400,000 free cash appropriation to supply funding to the DPW for stormwater maintenance services. Commissioner Bossinetto stated at the meeting that this $400,000 would supplement $1.2 million worth of grant monies that we are intended to receive as an MVP certified community. And that's through the state of Massachusetts. So there are $1.6 million worth of projects involving the John Fitch Highway Corridor and South Street that will be employed with this money. So it was $400,000 of city funds to secure $1.2 million in state funds. So the committee voted unanimously on that. 13220 was to appropriate $25,000 from available funds to the building department to finalize the digitizing of paper documents. That was unanimous. 13320 was a $20,000 free cash appropriation to the law office for labor negotiations involving several unions. That was adopted. 13420 was a available funds appropriation of $31,500 to various items within the Board of Health involving cleanup funds, airport rent, and contracted services. The airport rent is involving AKS recycling. 135-20 was a grant order for $5,508.80 to enhance effective pedestrian, bicycle, and moped types enforcement for the police. That was adopted. 13620 was another grant acceptance for $86,062 to support a broad range of activities, including preventing, preparing for, and responding to the coronavirus. 13720 was a grant of $100,000 to prepare and repaint the exterior windows of the library building. This was adopted as well. And this is in addition to the $50,000 the council appropriated out of free cash a couple of weeks ago. So we put up $50,000 to get another $100,000 from the state to do those repairs at the library. 13820 was a grant acceptance of $20,000 for supporting outreach efforts and getting a complete and accurate count in the 2020 census. And lastly, 13920 was a $69,000 grant acceptance for the purpose of covering airport expenses, including fuel purchases and additional work on the runway project.
I have a motion made by Councilor Zarella and a second made by Councilor Kuchar to accept the report from the Finance Committee. Speaking on the motion, we have Councilor Boschman.
Mr. Chair, I just got one thing to say on 132-20, the building. I'm all in favor of it, but I think as councilors, I think we ought to look at the possibility of us buying our own machine, because if you look at all the costs that we spent, we had to spend money in the water department, we had to spend money in the engineering department, in the highway, we spend money in the building commission, and I believe we spend money in the city clerk to put everything on this and that. It would be better for us to look at the possibility of us buying our own machines to do this kind of work, because I think we've spent close to $200,000, if not more, to digital everything around the city.
So, Councilor, we can certainly ask, and I can certainly send this to both the city auditor and the chief of staff to inquire. However, I don't believe it's just the machine that we're paying for. I believe we're also paying for the labor to do this as well. So I think that would probably entail taking people offline and exclusively designating them to scanning documents. That said, I have Councilor Zarella to speak on the motion as well. Councilor Zarella.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was actually going to say something very similar. The bulk of this, I strongly suspect, though I admit I have not personally checked, is labor cost, because having a scanner doesn't necessarily make it any easier to scan in I mean, I don't know how many people on the council or watching at home have ever been in the archives behind the existing temporary city hall. It's about half the size of a BJ's Wholesale Club, and it's all papers, some of them very old, some of which probably require special handling. We don't have an overabundance of staffing at City Hall to the point where we could take someone off of everything else they're doing and say, scan all this stuff in for several hours a day for a few months. I believe, having spoken at least to Mark Barbadoro at the building department, that going forward, we are digitizing our own files from the get-go. This is not something that we're going to have to repeat every 6 to 12 months or so going forward. But given the massive amount of paper that is currently not digital, or that was not digital prior to this project, this was a very, very necessary process. I can attest to that, having attempted to look up old zoning or planning decisions and having that basically amount to the equivalent of doing old school library research in the back of City Hall. This will make it quite a bit simpler and more efficient, both for employees and the public.
Councilor Di Natale speaking on the motion.
No, just this exercise that's been going on throughout some of the departments in the city that hold a lot of paper documents. This is going back over a century. And so it is extremely labor intensive, and it's almost all labor intensive. They're trying to get the city up to its current situation with everything going back decades and decades ago. So going forward, our employees will now have the software to scan themselves without spending hundreds and hundreds of hours going back to the 1800s in scanning these documents. It sounds like a lot of money, but when you look at the thousands and thousands and thousands of pages that they're doing, it is extremely labor intensive. And that was what I gathered from employees at the clerk's office, building, DPW directly, was it's a full-time job for what that requires for that period of time. If it takes 2 or 3 months, they're doing it for a full-time 2 or 3 months. So that's how much paper we're talking here. So this should conclude the exercise with this final appropriation.
So I have a motion and second. Unless there is objection, we'll accept the Finance Committee report by unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, it is accepted and the recommendations of the Finance Committee adopted. I do want to thank, we had also joining us on for this report as well as for economic development. We had both Mary Jo Bohart, who was just making herself available, Director of Economic Development, and our airport manager, Peter Kettle, present. And I appreciate them hanging on the line for the past 2 hours. They certainly weren't needed to speak, but I appreciate that they were available if questions were to arise. So thank you both. That said, we'll now move on to the agenda. We have a public hearing 12620 Unitil to petition for 3 new poll locations approximately 935 feet west of Williams Road on the north side of McIntyre Road as outlined in the enclosed petition. I now declare the public hearing open, and I would ask our representative from Unitil to join us. I believe we have someone joining us from Unitil. pause for a moment. FATV, if you don't have them, okay. All right, so unfortunately, they are not with us this evening. The hearing is now declared open. This is before the council. You may choose to hold this or to move forward with approving or rejecting. We do need to at least read in. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to the petition?
I do.
Okay. So, okay, so Counselor, you can speak to this, but this is typically for the public. And then, so what we can do is we can hold this, and I see actually a motion. So what we do is continue the public hearing. And so we would continue this to our next regularly scheduled council meeting, which would occur on, is it July 7th, Madam Clerk? Okay. So I have a motion. Do I have a second to continue the public hearing? Okay, I have a motion and second made by Councilor Fleming to continue the hearing. I think just to make sure I'm doing this right, I'm going to ask Madam Clerk to conduct a roll call vote on continuing the public hearing until July 7th, when a Unitil representative can be available. That said, Madam Clerk.
Councilor Boschman,
To the 7th, yes.
Councilor Kuchar. Councilor Kuchar. Thank you. Councilor Di Natale.
Yes.
Councilor Fleming.
Yes.
Councilor Green.
Yes.
Councilor Schultz.
Yes.
Councilor Squalia.
Yay.
Councilor Van Hazinga.
Yes.
Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Councilor Zarella.
Yes.
President Kuchmarek.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
All right, it is unanimous. The hearing will be continued until July 7th. Next, we have orders of finance. We have suspension. So we have someone joining us this evening. I'm going to bring in Chief Martineau, who is asking us for suspension of the rules on the following order: 14520. Order that there be and hereby is transferred from within the sum of $30,000. Same to be transferred from police personal services incentives and credited to police services overtime. And we have Chief Martineau joining us this evening. Chief, welcome.
Good evening, councilors. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Excellent. Thank you for taking this under suspension this evening. This request is a transfer within police personal services to anticipate getting us through the rest of this fiscal year. As you can see, it's going from police incentives over to our overtime account. And I'm making this request in anticipation of what may happen or what we may see in the next 3 weeks. And if it's not used, it will be reverted back to the general fund next year.
Chief, hold on. I have a motion and second for suspension of the rules. Madam Clerk, on the suspension.
Councilor Boschman.
Yes.
Councilor Kuchar.
Yes.
Councilor Di Natale.
Yes.
Councilor Fleming.
Yes.
Councilor Green.
Yes.
Councilor Schultz.
Yes.
Councilor Squalia.
Yay.
Councilor Van Hazinga.
Yes.
Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Councilor Zarella.
Yes.
President Kuchmarek.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
The matter is now before the body. I have a motion to approve made by Councilor Natale and a second by Councilor Boschman and Zarella. Speaking on the motion, we will take this. Madam Clerk, can we do this by unanimous consent?
I believe so.
All right. Unless there is objection, we'll take this by unanimous consent. Excellent. It is 14520 is approved. Thank you very much for joining us, Chief.
Thank you. Good evening, councilors.
Have a good evening. Councilors, next we have 14720 and 140, excuse me, we have 14720 and 14820. I would ask for that these be sent to a council as a whole committee on June 23rd. I have a motion made by Councilor Di Natale and a second made by Councilor Walsh. Are there any objections? Seeing none, this will be done by unanimous consent, and they will be sent to council as a whole, or a special meeting of the City Council on June 23rd. Councilor Zarella?
Just procedurally, I do not object, but I believe that because this requires a 2/3 vote, we need to do it by roll call.
You are correct. Thank you, Councilor Zarella. We will do this by roll call votes. Madam Clerk.
Councilor Boschman,
Yes.
Councilor Kuchar,
Yes.
Councilor Di Natale,
Yes.
Councilor Fleming,
Yes.
Councilor Green,
Yes.
Councilor Schultz,
Yes.
Councilor Squalia,
Yay.
Councilor Van Hazinga,
Yes.
Councilor Walsh,
Yes.
Councilor Zarella,
Yes.
President Kushmerek.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
Unanimous. Motion carries. Those will be sent to a special meeting of the City Council on June 23rd. And next we have two petitions which stand referred to their respective committees and commissions. I would just note on 15020, I would ask both the Economic Development and Legislative Affairs chairs to hold off on holding a meeting. I would ask that this be sent first to allow recommendations to be brought back from the Human Rights Commission and then later presented to the respective committees at the council level. So those will stand referred to their committees and commissions, and that would conclude the agenda for this evening.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion and second to adjourn, which we'll do by unanimous consent. Seeing no objections, we are adjourned. Thank you, councilors. Stay safe.